Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us here online today. We'll be here for a couple of hours, and Ethan and Barb are here as well. As soon as this event comes to a close, we'll take a short break and we will be back with them. We intended to have this event in person, and unfortunately, our venue is going through some construction and is not complete with that. So we had to move the event back here to the Facebook platform, but stay tuned because in August we might be able to get in there and actually do an event live, which would have been so nice because we miss the in-person so much. But it's so great for all of you out there who are all around the world, who are not close to us, to actually get your questions answered and take advantage of this time. If you're new, we're going to do a trans-channeled experience in a little bit, and we're going to bring in multiple guides to work with to answer whatever questions you have. And there's so much going on the planet today that we can use all the support that we can get right now. And I'll offer a little bit of a catch up and a window into what some of the channeling has been offering lately, which always is good to kind of bridge the gap between these various events. So if you're new to me, definitely check out the Awaken Empowered Expo YouTube channel. This is where all of my work is housed for free. So there's years and years of channel content there that you can go back into. And I encourage you to actually review, because a lot of what we were hearing about even back in 2016, 2017 had a lot to do with what's happening right now, unbeknownst to us. The way it has manifested is quite different than perhaps what we imagined, but there's some really great messages there that can bring clarity to this entire situation. And speaking of that, I also have a book that I have been editing. It's my first of 3. So there's 2 more on the shelf after this one. And the world is funny. Before all of this started happening globally, I had planned to travel and do events and a little sightseeing along the way, but found myself relegated to my home and in a very quiet atmosphere that was ripe and perfect to edit this first manuscript, which came through back in 2015. And much to my surprise, it was really telling the tale, the story of, I think, what we are in the midst of today. But I'm offering it free of charge to my inner circle community. So if you're not in a community, check it out on the website. The manuscript is called Epitime. And there is a community tab, a portal that you can access and put your zip code in to find loving and very kind, compassionate souls throughout the globe who are coming together to read these transmissions and share ideas and resources and energy. So it's a really wonderful opportunity right now. Also, we're in between the channeled courses or transmissions that I offer. The last one being Lightworker Inner Circle 18. The new one will start in September, and I don't have the calendar with me, but I'm pretty sure it's the second week, the second Monday in September. Now, it is entitled Prosperity, and it is going to cover the topic of abundance, but I really want to clarify, this is not, a get rich quick kind of course. It's not about us accumulating material and money, not about making 6 figures, right? Any of that stuff. As if the guides would teach that anyway. It's really bringing us closer to ancient definitions, rituals, and practices around abundance and what abundance truly means, what the frequency of it is. And I've downloaded a lot of information over the last several weeks leading into this course that I'm editing and reorganizing to send out. And it is going to be pretty thick with some new information about how to work with the frequency of prosperity even in the 5th dimension. So I'll have that out very soon. I always offer a pre-sale to my inner circle community. So if you've been in my communities, my courses, you'll get that on email and watch on Facebook as well. Flower of Life has some new things. Hopefully you've seen some of our announcements about some of our new team members. We have Ivy Rausch, who's joined us, who comes from the Waldorf schools and the Forest schools. and she is taking over as head wizard, head teacher of our Conscious Youth program. She's been doing an amazing job. She's been with us for quite some time now. And we have some great guest speakers lined up for the kids for the remainder of the year. We've got Susanna Mara this coming week. We have Lara Romero, who is a psychic medium channel. We have Mandara Cromwell, who works with cymatics and sound, and we're bringing Ethan Fox back on due to high request from the kids to do another session on numerology and astrology. So check that out if you've got a kid 9 to 18. We're going to be launching a new website very soon. We've got the mentorship program, all that good stuff. You also may have seen Sheila Buchanan is now taking over, or steering the ship of, I should say, our parent movement, which has been a real blessing for me and I know others around the globe during these very challenging times to get together and discuss and hash out all of these interesting issues and how they're playing out for our children. I'm seeing this movement really picking up and changing, and Sheila's got a great background to help facilitate this and move it forward. So those are free to open to the public. Check those out as well. And so many other things. Oh my gosh, so many other things that we're doing. So I want to start out just giving a little overview of what some of the chapters I've been posting have been talking about and how maybe they relate to the current energies. While I'm doing this, feel free to post your questions in the chat for the guides or for myself. Just go ahead and denote whether you want to ask it of me or during the channeling period. But I want to start with the concept of portals. So those of you who have been diving into the manuscript know that we've been getting a lot of information about portals and stargates and ascension codes, very fancy terms and technologies that the guides are breaking down into some really digestible, I think, understandings. But what really caught my attention this past week in my editing was how we are in such a pivotal time on the earth. Not that we don't know that already, but in relationship to portals. So if we go back in time, really before our seeding, we had ancient light masters, interstellar beings coming to the earth to work with this planet as a consciousness, to understand its mechanics. There were architects and grid workers that mapped out these various locations on the planet, like pulse points and very significant ley line crossings, where we wanted to amplify the energy and connect this new planet to a grid system to help it thrive. And that's really what portals do. They are a communication technology. They are very ancient. We have only tapped into a small fraction of what portals are capable of on the earth, but also some are still hidden. They are either purposely hidden and distorted from us, or through time, they just haven't matched our consciousness and vibration. So we think, well, portals are here. They're here to help us. They are in integrity, and certainly they are. But what I learned in this chapter was that they're very intricately wired and tied to us as a structure, to all living things and beings. So think of the potency of a portal being able to connect to the multi-galactic universe and feed information or allow beings to enter. It is a very intense and powerful source. If we have all of this going on the earth, and as a collective, we're not prepared or ready to deal with that information, some adjustment has to be made. And the guides alluded to the fact that the portals are actually working in concert with our DNA. So having gone dormant in many of our DNA strands, some portals have readjusted themselves to us to ensure that vibrations are matched, dimensions are matched. We're not being taxed and overwhelmed by something that we can't integrate. In addition to that, portals are unified. They're a collective consciousness. So in this chapter, the guides were talking about when all of the portals were activated before our seeding, and what an incredible vision this was from the universe to see this field or matrix of light all simulate together. Well, the simulation or connection has also gone dormant, and this has a lot to do with us as well. We have not been existing in a unified field. We are not a unified consciousness any longer. A lot of that has broken down, broken apart. So portals have somewhat mimicked this activity. Not necessarily bad, and we're not stating this to judge or to blame, right? It really is just a beneficial activity. It's somewhat like the plant collectives in us or the elements in us. We are all in sync and we're operating together as one. Well, in 2019 and the beginning of 2020, the guides alluded to a portal synchronization or timeline convergence of a mass scale. Now, this doesn't happen very often in our Earth's record, or hasn't happened very often in our Earth's record. One of those times was our seeding. So if you're following along in the book, you know that the guides are talking about our seeding from multiple star beings and how there were some distortions and unanticipated activities around this time. And this has to do with the fact that synchronized portals were very open and allowing beings in that perhaps were in cataclysmic states, not in the highest integrity. And some of that is the origins of reptilian consciousness that we talk about a lot, and of course, many other things going on the planet today. And perhaps we can say that we're here now in a very similar portal synchronization to reverse what happened during our seeding. But another time in history that the guides allude to in the book is December 21, 2012. And they say the Mayan calendar predicted this, but of course, we took it all out of context. It was really another one of these incredible times where the portals were resynchronizing, giving us an opportunity to activate ourselves, to step onto a new timeline. And this is why we had so many mass awakenings, people awakening around this period. And I know I was one. 2012 was a huge, huge turning point for me. When we have portals active in this caliber, we have to imagine the amount of timeline energy that we're working with. So the guys have talked about this period on Earth also being a timeline convergence. And what that means is we have a lot of other lifetimes and experiences that we've walked that are meant to somehow fuse and connect with who we are today and what we are yet to do. It can be somewhat karmic, obviously. There are things that we've done in other lifetimes that we're going to go back to and we're going to review through new eyes and attempt to heal. And that's a huge part of it as well. But on a mass scale, on a collective scale, we are dealing with so much timeline energy right now. So the question is, how do we deal with it? And how do we really influence what's going on? Because it's a lot to manage. So the prelude to this chapter had a lot to do with ascension codes. And before I talk about that, I want to weave in the timeline split here that many of us are concerned about and are just experiencing so violently, let's say, this divide or the polarity in collective consciousness. Of course, we can look at this situation from so many different planes of existence. We're in physical, and on the physical linear plane, it's really hard. There's a lot of arguments. There's a lot of clashing of beliefs. There's restriction and consequences and all of this kind of stuff. But what the guides were saying about portal simulation and timeline convergence is that it's necessary to organize the consciousness of a race by vibration and dimension. So they're alluding to the fact that the timeline split is actually an intelligent process that portals require because we don't want to leave anyone behind. This is the question I get in almost every single session. What about those that don't awaken or don't understand these things or make the choice not to go? What's going to happen to them? Well, what's happening right now is this timeline split or adjustment is really shaking out the differences in timelines and human beings so that they can be supported in very individualized ways. We don't see that on the Earth's surface. We just think someone can't awaken. They're not in the same vibration as us. They don't understand things the way we do. But what the guys are saying here is we have to allow everyone their own time. Because if we did not have this split going on, open portal, timeline convergence, mass awakening potential, we could have a lot of really difficult situations on our hands more than what we do now. We know, obviously, and I've seen this in my own work, and I know some of you out there have gone through these periods of mass awakening. It can be chaotic. It can be chaotic when we awaken that quickly. So we have to trust that on the vibrational planes of existence, there's an intelligent process playing out. So as these timelines come in, we as individual souls are working within our own ascension codes and timing to process this energy. And that means that our own individual influences are going to be the key to where we are meant to focus our attention. We know we chose a birth date. We're going to have vibrational influences as planets shift. This is to help us move and change, but it's also creating a container for us to accelerate our human experience. And this is why the guys have been so adamant that we're focused inward. We're focused on the microcosm of our personal lives, our families, our children, setting ourselves up for success, choosing the solutions in the world. Because as we do this, we're anchoring the frequency of the new. But beyond that, they talk a lot about neutrality. And so I want to weave this in as it has come into almost every chapter and event that I've done. And sometimes it's misunderstood. We think that to be neutral, we shouldn't pay attention to the things that are going wrong. We don't care if we are neutral. But that is actually not the case. Neutrality is like working with a new emotional intelligence because we have been so linear with how we work with emotion. We get angry. And when we're angry, we are consumed by the anger. We communicate through the anger. We exchange through the anger. We might make decisions when we are angry, which is never really a good thing to do because we are blinded by the overabundance or the imbalance of a frequency that is steering our ship. What the guys are saying is that emotional intelligence or neutrality is being able to work with emotions consciously where we can be angry, but we can also be curious. We can be angry and we can be calm or conscious. It doesn't have to consume us and take us out of the bandwidth of perception that actually makes a huge impact. Because when we let emotions carry us in this container that we are in, we're going to find ourselves without many options. So if we're on either side of the scale of neutrality, which in the book the guides gave an example of perhaps self-righteousness being one extreme versus self-consciousness being another, or ill worth being the other. If we're on either side of that spectrum and we're not in the middle somewhere, we are not going to shore up the energy that's coming in ways that we don't repeat it because we are in a vibrational universe. Whatever is out of balance is meant to be balanced. And then we're going to experience imbalance again so that we find a new way to balance it. And if we cannot balance the energy, what the universe does is it gives us another opportunity. He keeps repeating the same imprint, the same pattern, the same scenario. So to take this a step further, And I'll weave in a question. Actually, we had this great question or insight come into the Inner Circle community on Facebook. It was this week about lower vibrational entities, beings, reptilian consciousness and free will. Do lower vibrational beings actually infiltrate our energy fields and do not honor our free will? Or do we have the free will to say no? Interesting concept to ponder in the midst of all of this. And what the guides were actually showing me is that when we are conscious, first of all, what we are attempting to do is see life through multiple frames, through all of these different dimensions and opportunities. But we always have free will. No one can override our free will. When they do, if it's a being, a human, a government, a collective, whatever it may be, we're actually agreeing to something that we are unconscious to. So what we're attempting to do in our container, in all of these mass changes and timeline collisions, is to reclaim our free will to choose regardless of how we're being led, what we have believed in the past, certain circumstances or consequences that are false. Because if we do things in physical that are against our will because something else might happen, we are making ourselves vulnerable energetically in ways we don't even understand. In fact, it's very difficult, I think, to discern in the spiritual realm when there's some contradiction going on in physical. So we have to reclaim our sovereignty in the plane that we're in, the physical plane that we're in. We have to stand firm in it. We have to choose it. We have to see the things that are orchestrating around us some depletion of our energy and free will, or causing us to believe we don't have a choice, such that everything else falls into place. Kind of crazy when we think about it. And so to rewind this back to portals, it's all about communication. It's all about how we see the world. It's about what we're speaking internally to ourselves, how we're speaking to others. It's like the vibration of that inner temple is resounding in our field all of the time. And so if we can manage what's going on inward with what's happening out here, that's the quantum sweet spot where we make an impact on all of it. I hope that was helpful. We have questions, Ethan?
For you, Micheila, you offer communications at times from beings we know as gods and goddesses from Greek or Egyptian mythology. How did people first come to know them? Did they ever walk physically on the earth? And what types of beings are they?
Wow, I think this is a great question for the guides, actually. But I can give you my perspective, especially coming from the book, the transmission that I've been referring to. I do think that these gods and goddesses walked the earth, but I don't think it was necessarily in a form that we do. I think there were a lot of different variations on this because we had multidimensional beings that were hybridizing with humans in some of these civilizations and some of these time periods. So they had a choice as to how they wanted to shapeshift and show up. But I think it's a vibrational understanding that's most important because we today, as I've been speaking of, have diminished our access to universal knowledge and connection, and that's through the DNA. So some of these gods or goddesses, as they're referred to, came in very crystalline and with full access to their DNA. So it's kind of like a walking Akashic access that they had. And it goes beyond physical and creating things in physical, which I think certainly they taught and they did in these times. I think it has to do with sharing certain energies and frequencies and vibrations through them. And this was a part of why they were seen, in the form that they were. And just to add a little bit to this, because I talked about my next course on prosperity, there are a lot of or we'll say there is a lot of referring to these time periods as well. The Egyptians, for example, and the gods and goddesses that were adorned with all of these jewels and gold. And the idea is that we think it was a representation of some form of wealth, but they're saying that it was actually purposeful, that these amulets and jewels and elemental properties were close to the skin and held in the energy field. They were kind of like a sacred technology that kept raising consciousness. So we'll learn about that more in the next course, but I encourage that you ask that of the guides as well. Yeah, good one for them.
Hi, Micheila. Thank you for the kick butt job you're doing. Keep it up. I'm asking if you pick who comes through when you channel, or do they pick you? Have you ever felt unsafe or like you did not trust a guide you channeled? When you let them through, do you ever have to tell any to go elsewhere? How's that work?
First of all, I will say I think this is different for everybody. So what I'm about to share is not a technique that I think, works for everyone, nor do I advise it for everyone. But I do stay extremely open and always have from the very beginning of my channeling. So I can request a certain being or collective if I want. However, I have found that it's better for me and I feel more in alignment and integrity if I don't, because I like to be surprised by who comes in. And for me, this has always been a very important tool of trust. So sometimes I'll have guides and beings come in that I would never expect, or I'm open to reuniting with others that I haven't worked with before. But certainly in the last 10, 12 years, I have had many occasions to bump into energies that are not of the purest and highest. At first, very early on, I worked with my gatekeeper, Jacob, and sometimes I still do today. It's very rare. But if there is something I don't understand, a new group of beings or guides, I will always go straight to him and call him in to get confirmation of what I'm feeling. But I trust what I feel. So if I feel something is off, if the information isn't aligned, positive, uplifting, if it doesn't feel good in my body, I'm always suspect. So in addition to calling in Jacob, what I might do if there's a collective here that I don't think is helpful is I just simply resonate higher. And I know that sounds extremely simple and it's very hard for me to explain how I do it, but I do have a certain process and a visual that goes along with it and a feeling where I can kind of see the different realms and I can see the different directions and dimensions. And I might just push that energy aside and go further into the container that I've created for whoever it is. Maybe it's a one-on-one session or it's all of you, to bring that guide in. However, I will say there's a big difference when I'm doing this between one-on-one sessions and group work. The group work is completely different than the one-on-one. And then I have often, and it's not unusual, to run into souls, beings, guides within the energy fields of others who just are really not ones that we need to connect with. And I just immediately feel and know the difference and ask for more.
Micheila, I'm trying to find the balance between paying attention to what's happening in the world, which feels overwhelming and distressing, and paying attention to my joy and my life path desires. Sometimes it feels like I need to be prepared for the shortages and further limitations via local and federal governments and economy. Am I helping to focus this energy and bring it into being via my attention, or am I just making positive adjustments based on how life is changing daily?
Good question. I think that is what we're all struggling with right now. And I think it is important that we pay attention to what is happening on the planet. But what I've found is I have a certain boundary or a threshold that I reach where I realize it's starting to affect me in negative ways. And this might be for you acting out of fear. So we start to fear buy, we start to stockpile. And again, I don't think it's wrong to be prepared. We're staring at some really challenging circumstances in the next several years. But if we are going to act on these things, doing it from a place of empowerment and inspiration is really the way to go. So if I find myself from the fear acting in ways that are not empowered, I know that it's time to shut the door on some of that stuff for a little while and get back into the zone where I am centered and relaxed. And maybe that just requires some dedicated meditation or some fasting from social media for a while. I think what we have to keep in mind, and maybe Ethan will speak to this in his session later, is that a lot of what is out there, there's a lot of distortion. Okay, so generation of fear is really the goal, because if we are in fear as a collective, we are controllable, we're weakened. If we go back to my discussion on free will, we're not operating in our free will. So we have to take some of this stuff with a grain of salt and remember what Mary Magdalene always says, which we have to live a little bit in the mystery of what is yet to come, and with the faith and hope that everything's going to work out okay, while also managing. So I think it's a daily balance. I don't know that there's any one recipe except to really notice within yourself when things are starting to feel a little out of alignment, and make sure that you're also staying in your lane of service and what you're here to do. We certainly have to take care of ourselves and our families. Our well needs to be full so that we can overspill into service and the collective. But sometimes we can step out of the lane of what we're here to do and start acting in areas that aren't really ours to support. And this is where, again, we have to have a lot of faith and trust that we have many, many people on the planet who are assimilating certain roles right now. If we know what ours is, the most valuable way to affect what's happening on the planet is to stay in that lane. I wish that I could remember how Mary Magdalene said it, but I posted on my wall last week, I think, a transmission through her about not condemning or not judging and how to bring, peace to all of this situation. And she says, go to work. You go to work. You go to work in what you do, and you don't pay attention to the rest of it. So I hope that was helpful. I'm managing it every day myself too. It's not perfect. Definitely not perfect.
Question for Micheila. Can you speak about the current ascension symptoms? For example, buzzing in the ears, energy above the crown, eye vision changes, etc.
Yeah. So back to that portal simulation, we have a lot of energy coming in. If you've been following my work, we've been talking about the plasma light body and the plasma sun body and all of the solar and the Schumann. It's a lot of stuff. There's a new dimension that already exists here that we're in and out of, sometimes on a daily basis. And so some of this has to do with the physical adjustments, which are really the last place that all of this stuff takes place. When we're having buzzing in the ears or, adjustments, nausea, I've had some nausea lately. The physical body is actually integrating new energy or adjusting itself to a new field. Some of us have been seeing on a multidimensional plane of existence, and then we get sucked back into the third dimension, and it's kind of like jumping on a trampoline a little bit, Again, ascension symptoms are very unique for every individual. So we have to care for ourselves in ways that our bodies need. We have to listen to our bodies. We have to trust in the process and how they want to adjust. Not easy, I know, but certainly necessary as we go through this shift. And I think we're going to have more of that. This is an accelerated period of growth. It's not just going to happen on the earth plane in all of these various structures like education and medical and government. It's happening in our own energy fields as well. And it's a magnetic shift. Keep this in mind. It's a magnetic shift. So it's not just on a sensory basis we're going to see it in so many different ways, and symbology and synchronicity. And even my own child has been noticing this sort of mandala effect going on in their life, where they're planning things on a certain day and then they're moving to another day. It's like timeline jumping in many respects. So yeah, crazy time, a lot going on. I think that as we walk into the next several weeks, as we're building to the Lionsgate, that might be even more pronounced in our field. So we're going to have to find some ways to manage the energy and ensure that we're getting enough rest and water and meditation.
Hi, Michaela. I wonder about dental care, dentist treatment, and self-care. I hear no talk about that part of healthcare. Maybe Darren Sage should talk about this at some point. What should we do and what should we not do? My teeth are really bad. I don't know whether to follow conventional dental treatment or not. I wish new teeth would grow. I sometimes feel like I'm supposed to wait and see the miracle of new teeth appearing, but I'm really sick about this.
Yeah, I hear a lot of that lately. And I went on my own journey with dentistry not too long ago. It came into my awareness and was something that I had to follow through with, and found a holistic dentist in my area. Actually had consults with holistic dentists in other states and was willing to travel out of state to have some procedures done. But I did get rid of all of the metal. I reversed root canals and got rid of the wisdom cavitations, like all of that stuff. I completely cleared up. It was a next level detoxification for me that I didn't plan on, but it sort of happened. But I agree with you. I do think it will be possible in the future to do all of this vibrationally, to regrow teeth. We can already see that possibility in, the advanced medicine and, all of these DNA opportunities that are coming to the planet, not the ones that are negative, the ones that are more positive. I guess that this is going to be an individual decision for you. And I think that if it's in your awareness, it's there for a purpose. So I can't tell you what to do or whether to wait because we don't know. But what I learned is I went through this process to add to perhaps the toolbox of knowledge that I needed to work with others. And that's why I think it happens. If we're called to do something about whatever in our lives, health, dentistry, there's something coming in the future that it was necessary for us to explore. So I'd encourage you to seek out. There are some incredible holistic dentists on the planet. They're extremely hard to find. And I can tell you that even here in Michigan, there was only one that I found and no surgeons whatsoever that were able to take things to the level that I wanted. But I still found a way to get it done. I think anything is possible today.
Hi, Michaela. What do you suggest for someone who suffers from depression?
Ooh, we need to ask the guides this question. Well, I can tell you because I've worked in one-on-one sessions with many who have struggled with depression. And what the guides typically say is that depression is a state where we are in some form of deep rest and alchemy. We're usually judging ourselves so harshly for it, or society is judging ourselves for being a certain way, that it compounds the situation. Obviously, we know hormonal imbalances have a lot to do with this. And the way that it's been treated in conventional medicine is not really the solution. We have to consider that right now, with the shifts of the earth, there's a lot of electromagnetic instability, which is why our hormones have been all over the place and really, really hard to manage. I would have you ask that question again of the guides, but also consider that everyone is unique in how they approach these scenarios. I recently watched a video. It was all about research around depression and working with certain medications versus certain very alternative practices, one being cold water swimming. They took a group of humans who were depressed and they led them through a practice of cold water swimming. And they had a control group of others who were not doing the swimming, but who were on some form of medication, and compared the results. And those that did the cold water swimming accelerated in their healing. So there are many, many really cool, unique, and simplistic options out there. We have to find the one that best suits us. I'll just leave you with this also, because it comes straight from so many of my courses, especially going back to Inner Circle 13. If we are even in a state of depression, very extreme pain or trauma, to work with the breath religiously, we will find that path that is perfectly suited for us. The guides recommend in my courses a very deep inhale through the nose with a slight pause and a deep exhale through the mouth, ensuring that you're inflating your belly. This breath is magical. It not only stimulates the vagus nerve, which has a lot to do with our hormones and all of our organs and processes in the body, but it also sends out our Merkaba, which is like a technology to help bring back to us options that are perfectly suited to what we need. So always, always the breath is the catalyst for healing.
Can you offer any hopeful insights for those suffering with extreme chemical sensitivities during this time of transition?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Let's ask the guides that question. I think it's a clear sign that we are ascending when we are this way. And it means that we have to purify the container and review everything in our lives to make sure that we are in alignment with what our bodies now need. But definitely we'll ask the guides that question. We're good? All right, let's channel. So we'll bring all the guides in. We'll offer a general message for everyone who is here. And then as we take questions, we'll bring in whoever is best suited to answer those. Just sit in the energy of this as well. It's a big download. It's a vibrational transmission. It is quantum. What you receive will be quite different than what others do. And it may take a little time to integrate. We're going to work with the Council of Light. Those of us who are here are in deep appreciation for the assembly of those now, because we understand your requests. We have heard them, not through the words and phrases spoken in this transmission, but through the hearts, the minds, and the bodies of all. We are always responding to these requests, not because we are meant to change anything within your experience, but enhance your ability to realize how extremely powerful you are. And we want to bring more clarity as to the amount of energy that you are working with, especially on the earth today, as some of you are standing ready to merge dimensions and worlds very quickly. When a soul has become perhaps the fullness of who it is in the world, without any distraction of something else, without diminishing its worth or belief for another, it is now accessing its full record. And you may request a measurement of this. Our greatest measurement of a soul stepping into its fullness is feeling the fullness of its life, being able to become as present as possible with all that is, and find the richness and the excitement of being alive. This is always a possibility no matter what you face. And it was utilized by ancients and many intergalactics as a tool of realignment. Whenever a soul would encounter something that would seemingly stand in its way, it was directed to the present moment, the positive aspects, not to ignore the situation at hand, but to find some balance in approaching it in a way that was desired. Because if we stay focused on all that is wrong, If we find ourselves diminished by something that stands in front of us, we do not have at our disposal an entire suite of libraries and knowledge and energies that we came to Earth to work with, to focus on, and to embody. While this may seem a difficult task, we want to explain it in a way that may resolve many of the questions and issues you have brought to this channel. When we find ourselves unable to move, when we find ourselves at the depths of despair, when we do not feel as if the world is going in the right direction, we are meant to realize that we are perceiving a hologram that is transient and moldable and shaped by our consciousness. We are meant to manage both the vibrational and physical aspects of life, such that whatever stands in our way is allowed to be there, while we are contemplating what is its opposite and how we may utilize the tools at our disposal in the world to prove to ourselves that all is not lost. We understand the desperation and sometimes the deep sadness of what is taking place on the earth plane today. But we come to constantly remind you that this could not happen had some vibrational and physical template of a new earth already been installed, both within your minds and hearts and desires, as well as in the field around you. These things, both physically available and non-physically potent, are the ones that are often missed when too much attention is paid to the other. What you are attempting to do is to see the world as a grand ocean, where what is yet to change is holding on by treading water in impending and crashing waves of a new structure, a new system, a new dimension that is overtaking it. And while this may seem defeating, while things that are not ready to purge are holding on in such destructive and restrictive ways, we are not the ones with the lifeboat. We are the ones who are often treading water ourselves, but are meant to know that there is a surfboard waiting beneath our feet, one that we can grab onto and ride the waves of these new energies into an experience beyond what is now. We are just in the middle, perhaps the eye of the storm, where everything around us is swirling and we are watching it with great anticipation, but sometimes judgment and criticism. As we judge and criticize something that is wrong that we wish to clear from our field, it is like pulling it onto us and attracting it into our experience. So we see it pass by, we recognize it in the vortex, and we allow it to be there as we strive to grab on to the things that are here as well, that match our frequency, that are the new path of human salvation and ascension, and utilize them as the tools of awareness. We've been so pleased and honored to bring this message to you today, and we're pleased to also take questions.
Is it possible to receive a message from the Sasquatch Collective? And how can we continue to best support the Earth during this time?
We are the Sasquatch Collective, but know this, we are not those that many perceive us to be. We are interstellar, intergalactic, hybrid beings who have walked the earth and exist in a different dimension, only to be seen through portals and by those who are also time traveling. We are ambassadors of the earth, and we do work with plant and elemental consciousness, for we are very similar to them. But we also have great assignments as healers on the earth plane, working directly with some humans. What we have noticed is that The connection between the earth and the human body is most disturbed. In fact, there is a hybrid nature to all of you, which is one of your greatest assets. It helps you to communicate in languages that are not human. It helps you to balance frequencies with intergalactic races and beings beyond the earth. And it sustains you, creating a more resilient physical body than the ones you stand in today. What we have been taught is that if we are open to receive from all things organic, all things pure, we will become blended with their frequencies. But if we see things in a very impure state, we look at the earth and we criticize what is toxic and what is wrong, we are creating something in our field that is not equal to this pure hybrid nature we speak of. It is not to say that what has happened on the earth plane should be ignored, but to remember that the DNA is the way. It is a link and a very concrete connection in a matrix or field of coherence. And if we place within us the discordant programs that skew these signals, if we speak them to ourselves or we affirm them in the world, we are not becoming closer connected to our original divine blueprints. We also have a great appreciation for the structure of family in our collective. Community is something that is extremely important to us. And this is another area that we caution you on as humans today. There is a force attempting to destruct the family unit, to destruct or divide community. And if this is to continue, your hybrid nature, your DNA will surely suffer, because these will be patterns that will inevitably repeat in future generations. We are stronger as one. We relate to each other not only as physical, but as vibrational. We are a collective consciousness that is great in number. And if we share love, that collective is bound to thrive. So this is the message that we share. If you go back to your roots, go back to the family, go back to the community, go back to nature, and seal and heal these relationships in very constructive ways, you will find healing.
Can the guide speak about the Delta variant and what is true about this?
We are the Arcturians, and we want to confirm first that any pattern that exists in the physical body, whether it is a pattern of a bacteria, a pattern of a virus, is something that is influenced by the collective at large. While we know there are biotic and viral counts that are meant to be measured and normalized, some of them defined or diagnosed in a certain way, you are the keeper of these patterns through your attention to them. But also, there is a collective consciousness that is attempting to fragment the soul and the nature of all humans, the essence, purity, and truth of the physical and vibrational DNA. So when we're looking at a variant such as this in an environment that you are in, it is often manifesting from many directions. It is certainly physical and real only to the degree that we allow it. But it is coming from perhaps an influence far greater, a speed of vibration more powerful than what exists in the physical plane. It has been reinforced through spiritual. It has been a practice of fear or some influence that has been shared with us that has been cycling in the mind to such a degree that it has become inflicted in the minds of many. And when a pattern this great is allowed to expand, it is going to naturally become a part of our physical hologram. But we are not in fear of this, as it has been defined as a physical anomaly. In fact, we see it as no different than any other variation of disease that humanity has faced on the earth throughout history. We see it as something that human souls are contractually either in alignment with or agreement with to heal or to help become awakened by. In fact, we believe it's another opportunity that was offered to humanity to resolve what has happened within the past year, to see beyond the veil, to see the lower vibrational consciousness that is working through all of you. And it will certainly play out in that way. While some may be in fear and others may be curious, it is an opportunity for all to intersect with. And it may include going deeper into the understanding of DNA and genetics than you have been previously.
How do we break the patterns of being energy slaves? Is there a daily protocol that would be helpful for clearing unwanted energies? And what is the best way to recognize where one's energy is being hijacked?
We are the Pleiadian Collective. This is a very complex question to answer, for it happens so massively in so many different dimensions and in varying scales. Essentially, when you speak of enslavement, what we hear is that you are giving away your free will, because no living thing is able to be enslaved by anything unless they are choosing to be. So it is often the way that humanity has been trained or taught to believe it must exist in the world, that these very hidden aspects of enslaved frequencies exist, where a soul may unknowingly or unbeknownst to itself be agreeing to things that are causing vibrational anomalies. You see, we speak of consciousness so often in these transmissions and are always quick to say it is the one solution to everything that you request. And this is why. In the third dimension, you have been so linear. You have perceived a cause and effect. You have been trained that there are forces outside of you that you must listen to and obey. And in doing so, there will be things you will have to give up. Sometimes this has been your personal desires, your truth. Sometimes this has been your well earned currency. Other times it has been your choice. But ultimately, when we awaken, when we raise vibration and consciousness, we see our acts, we see our decisions through a grander scope, a grander lens. What made sense to us before, very limited belief systems we were grown up in, no longer make sense to us or are relevant to our present moment. And if we can keep expanding in consciousness, we'll begin to see exactly how and where we give up our sovereignty. But you have asked us about the physical and vibrational planes of energetic enslavement, or perhaps being infiltrated by a lower dimensional power. Imagine that you are a field of energy existing in a physical body with a mind and a consciousness, as you are. And there are things you are choosing, unbeknownst to yourself, that are not in the highest and purest intent. This is a message. It is not just a physical decision, it's a vibrating thread of energy, it's a potential that a collective consciousness and non physical may pull into their own thread. And this is how many of us find ourselves with vibrational attachments or some form of negative energy or entity that is causing us difficulty. It is not because we've done something necessarily wrong in our spiritual practice. It is not because we cannot discern or we are not stating appropriate prayers, affirmations, or boundaries. Often it is because there is some contradiction going on in our energy field. We have awakened to something that we know is wrong, that we are still participating in, and through agreement, giving our free will away. This is the only vulnerability that exists within a physical soul. When we say yes to things that we know are not serving the whole of humanity because we see no other option, we are doing so in our vibrational field in such a way that beings may take advantage. So, our advice is this: to be very consciously aware of every decision that you make and to know that there are more possibilities than what you may see. Sometimes we believe that we have no other choice but to assume something that we must do, when in fact, restriction is always leading us to the next open door. There is something we know is wrong because something right is waiting on the earth somewhere that we had not considered. We are being somewhat challenged to believe that we are this powerful, capable, and free to create a physical life that strengthens our energy field, not because of any form of protection, but because we are no longer willing to allow our sovereignty or our free will to be taken. This is something you should go easily and gradually with, and be very mindful not to judge or blame yourself, for you are in environments that are very challenging and difficult at current. The small decisions that you make have incredible impacts on your energy field and especially the whole of humanity. So keep that in mind and affirm those that you do, such that you are rewarded and reminded of how powerful you are.
Who are the hybrids, and do they have any message for us today?
Yes, so we are the Pleiadians, and we will start by saying that you are the hybrids, and all of us are the hybrids. We want to introduce you, though, to a collective of children who we think are the ones you refer to. But before we do, note that in all ancient civilizations on Earth, there was some form of hybridization potential that existed. If we look at the gods and goddesses of the past, we are seeing with our eyes the way that a hybrid being came to the earth plane. But you are all seated as a race of multiple others that came here in a frequency of love to share the highest aspects of their genetics for the evolution of a new race. And we will speak on behalf of the hybrid children. We are a one voice, and there are many of us who exist not only in light form, but in various physical manifestations on plasma and light ships, some of us on Earth. In unison, we say that we are perhaps the future of who you are today. Your work in this timeline is allowing us entry and perhaps the appropriate energies and nourishment to allow ourselves to thrive. We come not as one form of hybrid, and this is important to note. The diversity of physical and the earth plane is so important to unity consciousness. As you see yourselves today as many races and colors and forms, you are all strengthening a vibrational field that is necessary for humanity to evolve. And we come as perhaps a further manifestation of that, incorporating cosmic genetics that are different than those you have seen. Some of us have chosen to embody as Arcturian human hybrids. Others are existing as Syrian and Pleiadian forms of genetic. We delight in the fact that we are all different, and you are working out some of the most difficult patterns of the past that hold humanity from the pure acceptance and love of their individuality, so that we may arrive. So our message to you is this must start within. What you see in yourself as different or not of great beauty is one of your most valuable aspects. Until humanity, each one of you individually, are able to love and accept yourselves exactly how you are, the hybridization of all humans cannot forward. We also want to share that we see the brilliance of your energy fields beyond what you know. The auric fields around you shine with bright colors that merge and combine. And this tells us of how deeply you are changing, how willing you are to communicate with us and within yourselves. And we take great delight in this.
When two or more join, what do the guides say about this community and other communities that have heartfelt intentions and visualizations for universal energy flowing in the form of financial abundance and well being to all humans for whom it is their highest good, and to dissolve and resolve all current stress with ease, love, and joy on planet Earth?
We are the Lemurian Collective. We are an assembly of elders who acknowledge that you are heading back to periods of our own where these enlightened practices were the basis for how our civilization would thrive, how we would live in great peace and abundance. But we want to share a part of this that is sometimes unrecognized. When two or more gather, there can be influences of love that are strengthened, or there can be separation that is also the result. Sometimes the formation of community may be based in separation or ill intent, very unknowingly, as there is some frequency of superiority that is held. This could never be a part of our practice. We are not to look at ourselves as better than any other, for if we did, all would suffer. So we appreciate these practices, and we know that the vision that is held and stated for all of humanity to benefit is the most important, because if there is any instance of ill intent or separation, superiority or righteousness, the container of community becomes distorted. It sends a signal unknowingly that is similar to many of the hierarchical structures that you're attempting now to deconstruct and rid of the planet. We also suggest that the strength of those in certain communities that are looking at their practice or their breath work as a tool of alignment is something that the new earth is dependent upon. Because if we as humans are only existing in the singularity of our personal hologram or even our families, we are perhaps not reaping the rewards or the benefits of how the fifth dimension works. This was a part of our transition and our experience as well. The fifth dimension is perhaps the first step in accessing more multidimensional energies and knowledge. It is where manifestation takes place completely differently than before. In fact, is quite easier than what we may have anticipated. When we are caring for our brother, when we are holding space for our sister, we are not contaminated in the way that self service has taught. And we become ambassadors of receiving in great amounts, such that our service may go to the next level. Communities are also anchors of light. They are like a centrifuge of energy in a certain geographic location on the earth, upholding pillars of a new dimension. And as they allow this dimension to land, it is inevitable that the energy will surge through the grids of Gaia and be shared with those on other sides of the planet. We see this already happening today. So we are in great reverence of those of you who are called to live in this way. But even if it seems impossible from where you stand to attract the right community or to find in your area those that are in resonance, it is the principle of community within you that is most important to remember. You may live this way within your own home and in your own right. It is a self generating prophecy when we become this collectively focused.
How did people first come to know the gods and goddesses from Greek or Egyptian mythology? Did they ever walk physically on the earth? And what types of beings are they?
We are the Pleiadians. This is a complicated answer as well, because you must consider there is no end or beginning to any timeline. From where you stand today, these periods of time are well in the past. But every decision that is made in this moment with you and between you and another soul or a group of souls is a splitting of energy that goes on and on to eternity. So these gods and goddesses, while certainly in the timelines you speak of, walked the earth in various physical and hybrid forms, today they are still just as accessible and spoken to in different ways. But we do acknowledge that intergalactic beings were often called to very pivotal timelines and geographic locations with a purpose. An example of this is in the Egyptian timeline where pyramids were constructed. These feats required not only some physical basis on the earth, but great light masters to teach other humans in the ways of manifestation and working with other dimensions. These periods of time can be seen as both helpful and supportive, but also um, um, difficult, as intergalactic beings may have embodied with ill intent as well, becoming hybrid. But we want to explain why a hybrid exists and how it shows up in a certain form on the earth plane. Taking aside the idea that you are all hybrids and going back to the periods of time you are speaking of, this was a different vibration that existed on the earth plane, but nonetheless a very physical vibration, as that was always the intent for Gaia. Gaia is a physical planet, and those who come and choose a lifetime are very enamored by that idea. So to reject that physical as a place of abundance and fulfillment is perhaps setting in your energy field a contradiction to your original intention for coming. But as an intergalactic soul, a great master, for example, like Ganesh, was to decide to come to the earth for some important task. They were coming from an angelic perspective, from a place of merging, a place of light. And as they would decelerate through the various realms, carrying with them parts of themselves from other dimensions. This was not as physical as what you may think, but based in knowledge. As we see a hybrid arrive on Earth, what we're truly seeing is the aspects of themselves, the knowledge that they bring from multiple dimensions, transforming into form. This is why giants walked the Earth and were known in periods of time. They were giant, they were mammoths, not because they were attempting to overpower, but because the knowledge they brought was so great that the light of that knowledge reconfigured into vibrating form that was massive. So hybrids show up in multiple forms because they are coming into the Earth's atmosphere and alchemizing light into material. They are vibrating at a slower speed. And it is the knowledge, wisdom, and aspects of themselves and other dimensions that take this shape and form and are dependent upon how it manifests.
My son is 25 and really having strong anxiety, and now it appears maybe turning into psychosis. Is this a psychic? Are these the psychic attacks we are hearing about as people awaken? And how can I help my son?
We are the Arcturians, and certainly this can be an experience on the Earth plane today. This is typically due to unnatural frequencies in the Earth's environment and the collision of those with a very sensitive soul. Now, we want to explain that to some degree, humanity must understand that psychosis can be a fragmentation of a soul's energy. When we are not able to maintain our emotional or mental body, it is often because we do not have at our disposal all parts of ourselves working in concert. This can be from the root of some trauma. And it is not our responsibility as parents, nor our um, ability to reconfigure a fragmented soul. What's happening is the soul itself is attempting to rebalance through these certain outbursts or activities. We may see a soul that is unable to contain themselves or become an active part of society in acceptable ways. But actually, what the physical body is doing is attempting to bring all of these parts of self back into wholeness. It's adjusting to unequal frequencies in the environment as well. This is another manifestation of it. We do see new technologies being implemented on the linear plane of Earth that have embedded within them an intention to skew signals. This does not mean that every human is vulnerable to this energetic attack. First, it is very dependent upon each individual soul's level of consciousness, as well as the amount of spiritual focus and practice that they have had in their past. And this is not to judge, but what we're saying is those who have been focused in this way for a very long period of time may have reached a frequency beyond where these signals can skew. What you're striving for is to ensure that you are interacting with all things of higher frequency, such that you may ride this time out without becoming fragmented or in some way imbalanced by what is taking place. A very simplistic example of this is very high potency and nourishing plants. These contain plasma and solar energy, vibrations that are very high. When we are utilizing these consistently, we have the ability to sustain our energy regardless of what is happening in physical. Think of this as becoming more light. What we're truly attempting to do is become lighter humans such that we vibrate beyond the physical plane. Not that the physical plane is wrong. We want to enter it and be able to manage it with complete coherence and ease. But if we are matching these frequencies or we are vulnerable to them, we will find it very hard for us to work in very peaceful and coherent ways. Another example of this is where the emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental bodies are not aligned. This is something humanity has been working out for quite some time. So, our suggestion to you is this. As a parent, you were chosen as a model of a path that may be taken. So you may be called to take an inventory of everything in your environment that is of a lower frequency and bring things into the household or to your environment that can be modeled by your child, or through the sheer presence of them will have a beneficial impact. As we've mentioned, we are not describing this condition for all. We're answering your question in a very broad sense, knowing that many humans are susceptible and subject to these frequencies.
If life challenges such as illness and relationship pains, etc., are all part of soul contracts we have made, how is it that suicide is different than these other contracts made, for example, terminal illness, car accidents, etc.? Could it be that people who commit suicide are also fulfilling a contract made with others?
Yes, we are Mary Magdalene. And we affirm that what you are speaking is true, for this could be no different than any other choice made. But a choice that is made to this degree is never one that is only meant to affect a small number of people. There is a wiring within you of multiple contracts, a matrices of humans that you may never know or see that are impacted by your entire existence. This is how important some of these decisions are. When we look at some of the most difficult paths, like suicide or trauma or physical abuse, we are looking at angelic souls who came and chose circumstances that they knew would be quite difficult on the earth plane, but embodied in such density that a part of their soul forgot. This was the truth of what they chose. But the choice is made anyway. It is always through the orchestration of a higher power. And it is not to say that a higher power is inflicting pain or causing suicide, but there's a part of us that knows of our assignment. It is a part that embodies with us and walks with us in every moment. It knows when things are about to change. But even in very stark change or some contractual agreement, we have a level of free will to create a reality that serves the purpose without having to make one decision only. Meaning, there's never one path to resolve our karma. There is never one decision that we must make in order to leave an impact on those we agreed to. But sometimes the earth experience becomes so disillusioned and difficult for us to walk that we only see one way. And there are some who choose to exit the planet early because this was their vision. They knew that there was only one way, when in fact, a higher power or a presence in them may have been offering other options that were unheard. There are so many who take the blame for these circumstances and believe that if they had done something different, the soul would not have chosen what it did. This is one of the greatest mistakes we see, the guilt that is carried. We want these stories to be certainly seen as an opportunity to love more, to make greater connections, to strengthen the bonds of all humans so that they never see themselves alone. But when a soul comes to make a great impact on the planet and chooses a way that is devastating to itself and others, it is something that we often did not have a hand in, other than in a higher plane of reality, orchestrating some experience of this that was meant for us to use for ourselves or for a greater focus on healing the human condition. What is not often considered is that when these souls transition, they ambassador again on the earth something within their assignment that is now chosen differently. They may come back and experience the pain of the human condition, but choose another option. And we always, from an angelic perspective, have the ability to replay some of the most difficult scenarios we have chosen. It's never because of how it affected us. We see the great pain it inflicted upon others. While we notice how some may have received it in beneficial ways and used it as a lesson in their lives, we know that if we come to replay the story differently, it will impact even more. So these souls inevitably come back. Those that exit the planet in this way are not ones who choose relationships beyond Earth very quickly, because they know that the Earth is such an important area of focus that they will often embody again.
I recently bought a microcurrent frequency device called a Healy. It delivers frequency programs to the body via electrodes and a quantum sensor. Can you speak on the efficacy and effectiveness of this device and others like it as consciousness raises?
We are the Arcturians, and we see so many of these technologies coming to the surface of the Earth today. They are certainly very cosmic and have come not only from past civilizations, but also future human hybrids who are using them now with great success to heal the physical body. The human biofield is going to be a great focus of attention as you walk the next 10 to 20 years. This is because you are more than flesh and bone. You are an electromagnetic matrix of energy that is surging through a human body. And unless this is studied, researched, and understood to the degree that we know, humans will live with chronic disease for a very long time. The device that you speak of and others are some of the first iterations, we believe, of where these technologies are going. And this is not to criticize them. Something that we have great concern about is the pulsations of electromagnetic energy that run through them at times. If they are not completely cleared of some of these discordant frequencies, they will find their way into the human energy field and can have a very disrupting result. However, the incidence of this is very slight when compared to the benefits, because humans are in an environment where man made electromagnetic frequencies are weakening them on a day to day and hour to hour basis. So when we are giving the body a certain feedback, we're strengthening its ability to work in this environment, to hold states of balance and coherence much longer. But we also want to explain that the human biofield itself is beginning to change. What's happening right now is the electromagnetic fields of Earth are increasing so quickly that what is known today about the energy field is something that will have to keep pace. In other words, those that are in these areas of research and study are going to be challenged, certainly, to keep their technologies very up to date with where the Earth and human energy fields are going. We also see one more disadvantage we'll speak of in regards to some of these advanced forms of technology. Many are using using them without the deliberate instruction or guidance of a knowledgeable source, meaning they may be choosing and matching programs that they believe that they need when in fact are not the best for them. While it may seem that this wouldn't do any harm, if we have an energy of our or an area of our energy field that is already working in perfect balance, and we send more of a signal or frequency to it, we can throw it out of balance. This is how powerful these devices are, but also how vulnerable the human energy field is. So we do advise in the interim that each of you are using personal discernment and working with those who are very knowledgeable about these technologies, knowing they will change.
The last couple of days, my physical body has experienced very different energies, very hard on my physical body. Are we able to transmute all that is coming to us, and what would happen if our physical bodies cannot?
We are the Arcturians. First, we wish to explain that you are capable of integrating energies beyond your knowing. It is just that the physical is such a slow speed of vibration, especially how it has manifested in the last 10 to 15 years, that it is taking on the brunt of these transitions in very painful and sometimes difficult ways. What you're attempting to do is not transmute so much as integrate and merge. And often, when there is pain or some difficulty of integration, it is because there is some block in us that is not allowing the energy to flow freely. While it may seem simple to clear all of these blocks to allow this transmutation to take place, we know that so many of them operate beneath the subconscious mind that they are hard to see. Our best advice to you is this: the physical body is something that will change drastically over the next several years. In fact, because of the speed of light that you are operating in, it is inevitable that the physical body is going to go through very intense change. When we feel pain or there is something going on of discomfort, what we choose to assume about that is actually the communication that the body receives that is either supportive, conducive of transmutation or integration, or blocking the energy. Often, when we have discomfort or pain, we are jumping to some conclusion that something is wrong, when in fact, the body is simply reorganizing. Cells are shifting and energy is expanding in our field. If we are to trust more in the body, go to our very potent vibrational tools like breath and utilizing very high quality forms of nourishment and water, and letting the body do its work, being at rest with the process, we will fare far better. There are certainly far more possibilities that exist for humanity than what we speak of this transition. We know that a great portion of you are not awake and aware to what is happening on the planet today. And some may be integrating energy that feels like chronic disease or pain. Our goal is not to change the minds of those who do not know, but to hold space in our own bodies for the entire human template to change. It is your blueprint that is emerging, and the birthing process is not always comfortable, but we receive great rewards at the end.
Is there a hidden agenda behind the COVID vaccine?
We are the Pleiadians, and to answer this question, we would go into a linear expression of what you speak. You are all participating in this together. It is to assume that you have no influence on the world to say that there is an agenda. There is certainly an agenda. There are a group of humans who are playing out the story of what humanity is manifesting. But we cannot confirm that this is an orchestrated event. While we know that there is a small number of humans on the planet today acting out reptilian influence, the reptilian influence has become so incredibly wide that it exists within the DNA of all of humanity. So there are many agendas, not just one. But if we look at the way that this disease or virus has manifested on the planet today, we notice certain patterns. Within it is embedded a code, and that code has many interpretations. It can be seen as an advancement of our higher spirit and our connection to the universe, or some tampering with it to hold us back. Either way, we are recognizing the pattern for what it is and have an opportunity. We also know that on the physical plane and material level of existence, there have been hierarchies that have been reinforced for generations of time. And these lend themselves to the feeling of powerlessness and to the restriction of energy to a slight few versus the all. This is something we wouldn't define as an agenda so much as a result of decades of creative energy being channeled in a certain direction. Very unbeknownst to many of you, you have been lending your creative energy in this direction. But it is also an opportunity, we believe. There is a collision of energies taking place in this one manifestation. In other words, it is an opportunity of great human awakening. It is also an opportunity to see beyond the veil of lies that have been, for again, many, many decades of time, reinforcing a false agenda that you are asking us to define. This is such a complex issue. It is not just about this one disease or virus. So many put it in a very separate lane, but if you are to widen your perspective to the whole of the earth, you will see that it is entangled in every other thing that exists in the third dimension. It is entangled with finance. It is entangled with government. It is entangled with medical and physical health. It is entangled in your education models. It is entangled in business. All of these things must change at this juncture for humanity to land the fifth dimension. So if it is an agenda, it is one that is not only playing out in a lower vibrational way, but it is one that was always pre-planned by the souls that are here now as a resistant force to awaken the masses to move them forward. And ultimately, this is how we see it.
Unfortunately, I've given in to peer pressure and have been vaccinated. Now I have so many toxins in my body and have been diagnosed with Morgellons syndrome. I intend to detoxify it in many ways. I'm afraid my contact with the other side and contact with the light energy will be ruined by this poison. Could that be so, and can you offer any advice?
We are Archangel Michael, and we speak on behalf of an entire collective of ascended masters and angels. There is so much concern for those who have made decisions, who are now awakened to the potential of what those decisions create. But we've alluded in this transmission many times to the notion that mistakes are truly not. They're opportunities as we see them. What we are being offered, perhaps, is some occasion to now become more of who we are, to understand the human condition at a certain level, and to be healers of something in the world that we would have never understood how to do had we had not chosen the way we did. If we can keep this in mind and not judge what we have chosen, this is the first step. For in the diminishing of self, we are not accessing the fullness of information available to us to change our reality. But to go into an explanation of how this affects consciousness is to look at consciousness in a very limited light. Consciousness has no effect of anything in the physical world. Consciousness is actually a choice that humanity comes to the earth with that will show up in many occasions in life. We are not only able to connect beyond the veil of the third dimension, regardless of our physicality, but it is physicality that often is the moderator of how we do this. We go through dark periods and nights of the soul to reorganize all of the conduits through which energy flows. We do not realize that through our decisions and perhaps mistakes, we're rewiring some etheric cord that is pulling us into new relationships and knowledge in the ethers. But from a physical standpoint, know also that this pattern in the DNA is a strong one. It is one that will manifest differently within all humans, but it is creating a weakness to those patterns that have come through the lineage of our family, meaning it is taking attention and energy away from some of the more beneficial energies that surge through our meridians and channels and putting their attention on something that is not necessary. This is why often chronic disease is the result. Humans will become more vulnerable because patterns of the past will be more apt to emerge. But in the same way that you may have approached this before the instance of a vaccination, is a very logical path in our mind to changing it now. Meaning you are meant to use all things at your disposal to shift your vibration to the highest state that it can be, because vibration is, we'll say, the path to shifting physical. This is not only relegated to nourishment and to plant medicines and herbs, for example, to detoxification of the physical body, but to everything in your environment that would hold you separate of source, anything that would tell you you are disempowered. This is the ultimate goal of what the previous question has asked. Is the agenda truly a physical manifestation of disease? We think it is more an attempt to disempower. So the more disempowered that you feel, the more apt you are to reap the consequences of these actions. These are periods of time that we are meant to truly understand the depths of who we are. So go slowly with what we have spoken of, peacefully with your path, and in faith and trust of what you have chosen, such that it makes the greatest impact on your service.
I'm trying to find the balance between paying attention to what's happening in the world, which feels overwhelming and distressing, and paying attention to my joy and my life path desires. Sometimes it feels like I need to be prepared for the shortages and further limitations via local and federal governments and the economy. Am I helping to focus this energy and bring it into being via my attention, or am I just making positive adjustments based on how life is changing daily?
We are Quan Yin. We want to introduce a concept that perhaps is the simplest one to utilize in these circumstances, For you find yourself in the midst of a very difficult period of physical and energetic balance. Those in my lineage were taught the ways of blessings. When we see something in the world that is happening that we do not approve, our focus is not upon that event such that we can cause more suffering, but to send blessings to those through our energy field such that we realize we are the powerful beings we are able in physical to realize, so that we realize we are the powerful beings in physical that can change our personal realities. When we are this focused on others as a conduit of energy, we begin to see our own reality change. No longer are we drawn to physical to see only the negative. We may see it without attachment, and we may use it as a tool to be of service and to be prosperous for those who cannot. Those may those who hear this may feel that being prosperous while others are not is a crime against humanity. But we share all that we have first, vibrationally, such that we learn the ways of sharing it efficiently on the physical plane. Sometimes we are not in the right vibration to know how to act. As we see the world through a very narrow lens and see what is taking place, we may act in haste. But if we pause and breathe and send blessings and abundance through our energy field first, we are aligning ourselves to a greater state of prayer. It is like opening a conduit that exists above our crown, where energy flows beyond our own abundance. And we are guided as to how to use it in the most efficient and purposeful way possible to make an impact in our incarnation. This is our greatest advice. You are not to draw your attention away from those in need, nor those who are causing discordance, but to see them all as a reflection of yourself and send the energy that is necessary to rectify the loss of love that has caused these events. And as you do, notice the synchronicities, the gateways and signposts in your personal reality that open it to receive in perhaps ways that you may not have anticipated nor requested, but align perfectly to your divine plan, such that your walk upon the earth leaves a legacy of love behind.
How do you know if you're in 5D or not, and how do you get into it and stay in it?
We are the Pleiadians, and first, no, the 5D, as you stated, on the earth plane is a very unstable frequency. It is a variant one. It is not held congruently or consistently. And we don't say this to frustrate you nor to criticize. When a planet or a star is purporting to move into a higher dimension for a period of time, there will be distortions and instabilities in any dimension. These times are designed purposely for us to choose the relationship to the dimension that we desire such that we are able to stabilize it. And further, it is not um, perhaps sustainable for a planet or a star system or the entirety of a race to operate in different dimensions for a long period of time. It is not by design what you are meant to do. So, what you're experiencing right now is somewhat of a tug of war of your energy field. And this may lead to the answer to your question of why it is difficult for you to sustain. It is not by fault. Perhaps it is just a reflection of where the entire race is in this moment. But as we've suggested, it is most important that you are always choosing a fifth dimensional path. And when one is not available, that you are visualizing its manifestation. And if you do get pulled back into what feels dense or heavy, is defined as the third dimension, that it is not a mistake. There has to be an anchor point for new dimensions to arrive. You are not attempting to manifest or land a new earth without some meeting point of that in the previous dimension. And this is why many of you still find yourselves today surrounded by those who have yet to awaken to some of the concepts that you know, or find yourself feeling as if you are being pulled into the third dimension. It may be purposeful that your light is needed there, your knowledge, your vibration. There may be something that you are yet to understand about the merging of these worlds. So criticize it not, but attempt to balance it more. When we allow what was before to create inconsistencies or incongruities in our energy field, take us down in our vibration, this is where we become less powerful creators. In the fifth dimension, you are so accelerated in what you are able to manifest almost instantaneously. The third dimension has no bearing on that if you find yourself there, unless you choose to allow it.
Any advice or insights or reminders for those of us experiencing high levels of anxiety, confusion, and painful self-judgment, extreme nervous system sensitivity? Am I assisting the planet's integration, healing, or clearing something, or is there something I'm doing or thinking that is causing me unnecessary suffering?
We are the Arcturians, and this is a very individualized question indeed, but we will simplify it by saying your nervous systems are very tied not only to the earth, but every other human within your collective. As this is a very stressful time on earth, those of you who are far more ascended and sensitive in your sensory will feel the stress of others, will feel the entry of thought forms that are not their own, and may claim them, certainly because their structure is taken down. What is most important to know is you all have a personal rhythm, regardless of your level of coherence. This is most unknown and is a massive teaching to share, but you were designed such that you are connected to all in unity while also maintaining your own unique vibration. Sometimes we see humanity getting lost in one direction or another. If we're only maintaining our individual vibration, our own soul essence and sound, we may become self serving or separate of a unified field. If we're only tuning in to the energy of others and what is happening on the whole of the earth, we become imbalanced in that way. We are attempting to adjust both. And at this period, we suggest for you allowing yourself to be exactly where you are without judgment. This is always our first um, advice, because what we judge within us, what we judge within the world, is not equal to the beauty of this coherent or individual frequency. It's a disturbance. And you have been led into this disturbance very easily and subconsciously. In fact, we see or we have observed a frequency field that has been created on the earth through these distortions. If we are constantly judging and criticizing ourselves or another, we are changing our relationship to ourselves and humanity in an inorganic way. Reclaiming that first is the step we advise. Yet also know that some of you are running energy very purposely through your meridians as grid workers and gatekeepers. While some of these assignments have recently shifted or come to a close, others are being called back to support the anchoring of the new grid that has been somewhat unstable. This can cause a soul to feel very anxious and disrupted in their nervous system. And our advice in these cases is to ensure that you are cleansing and purifying with salt baths, as well as ingesting as much water and mineral content as possible. You are channeling so much energy and light through your physical bodies that the depletion of that can have a very negative effect on our emotions and our minds. Also, we suggest that within you, you find your own frequency through a meditative practice. And we want to share this with you now in a very simplistic way. Some of you have been so apt to focus on unification and what's happening on the whole of the planet that you've lost touch with your own inner sound, with your own inner frequency. And it is important to spend some time each day reuniting yourself with that original design. So, all of you who are here, we invite you, if you choose, to take a very deep cleansing breath and relax into your chair. You may lie down if it is preferred. Very deep inhale to ensure that the belly raises and falls, letting go of the worries of the day, letting your muscles and tissues and bones relax. Focusing only inward now, inward and downward, restricting your attention away from the outer world and towards your heart, as if a chamber exists there that is yours only to explore. As you breathe deeper, with a slight downward view into your heart, allow yourself to become fully relaxed and immersed within, as if you are in the container of your own blood flow, your own life force, your own physical body and meridians. You are now restricting your attention away from anything of earth, from humanity, from belief systems, from anything that is taking place in the world today, just for a moment, for this purposeful reunion into your heart. And as you remain there, you may feel some restriction. It is first our path to open and clear and relax the heart so that we may feel our own breath, so that we may feel our own frequency. Breathe deeper into the heart and begin to see a million cords untangling a knot that exists wherever you have restriction. As these cords fan themselves outward, they straighten and align. They reconnect inside of you in different directions. They are perfectly straight and organized. And with the breath, you may feel your shoulders relax a bit deeper. You may feel your arms go heavy. You are now fully into this chamber where your divine soul essence, your unique sound exists. As you take a moment with the breath, feeling it, sensing it, allow it to overcome you, to expand in all directions, to pulsate into your crown, through your solar plexus and into your sacral, through your root and all the way down to your feet. State very quietly and simply to yourself, I am renewed. I am renewed. I am renewed. State quietly and simply to yourself, I am home. I am home. I am home. As you remember this beautiful location, this place within you, You know that it may be visited any time. It is an immediate reset of your entire structure to harmony. It balances all energies. It releases all thought forms and emotions that are not your own. It nourishes the waterways of the inner cells and spirit when used in service. And it takes you back into the loving arms of your higher and angelic self as you feel safe and secure, embodied in form. Another deep cleansing breath. When you are ready, you bring yourself back into the fullness of your body. Begin to again sense the room around you, the chair, your feet on the floor. Practice this daily if possible. We believe it is one of the most simple tools that you may use beyond your own self-acceptance.
Could you conclude the session, please?
Yes. All of us who are here, the Arcturians and all others, are in the greatest amount of love and respect for your journey as we are supporting you to the best of our ability. We see you changing beyond what you recognize. While it is hard to imagine that the earth could change so drastically, we have seen the holographic models of what lie in your potentials, and it is beautiful indeed. Many blessings. All right. Thank you all for being here with us for these few hours and for all of your incredible questions. We're going to take a short break. Barb and Ethan will be up next, so load up the chat with some great questions, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Take care.